Hi, and welcome back to the latest podcast from us, Beck and Lynn, the Lynn and Becky Show, otherwise known as the long version, Mrs. Mummypenny Talks with Ridley Writes. And we are on to episode 2. Yay! So we're recording these pretty much in real time. So we've just published our first episode, which went out a couple of days ago. It's had lots and lots of listens, so we're very excited. We've had some really lovely comments and feedback, so thank you to everybody who watched our first episode. It was a very personal episode, wasn't it, Beck?
Very much so.
Talking about a lot of... We didn't really focus on that much sort of positive stuff, did we? We just sort of went through all the trauma of our lives.
I think we talked about it in a positive way. I think that's how we got round it.
Yeah. And this is the positive sort of end to the story, is us sat here doing this podcast together, that good stuff can come from all that trauma. But so we've got a long list of content that we want to talk to you about in this podcast over the next few weeks. And it's a bit like, so we've got this list of, I think there's about 10 pieces that I've written on that list, isn't it? And we sort of go through each week and cherry pick the kind of things we want to talk about. But something that we thought would be good for this week, because it's still in the news, it's very relevant, and I've certainly had communications about it from one of my children's schools, is the Everyone's Invited website that popped up, I don't know how many weeks ago, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I think it arrived in the news a few weeks ago. I think it's been around a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. So I think it would be quite interesting to talk about some of the things that are coming up on that website, and the reaction in the media, and also interestingly it was the reaction I got from my eldest school, so what they're actually doing in schools about it, because a lot of the stuff on Everyone's Invited is experiences, rape culture experiences from school, college and university. And in preparation for this, we've both read through a lot of the entries on the website, and I sort of read through them thinking it all sounded quite familiar. It was stuff that had either happened to me or stuff I'd known had happened to friends. And it was almost stuff that I'd normalised. And I hate using that word normalised, because I feel like I've normalised far too much bad stuff in my life. But it was just horrible to read those stories and think, yeah, that happened to me.
It's harrowing. I think that's the word, isn't it? And I remember when Me Too as a movement kicked off, and I mean, what was that? That's quite a few years ago now. That's been going for a long time.
That's probably like 3 or 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah, and even at the time, I remember being really outraged by it, and many of the things that I've done in my life since then, related to feminism, and being much more outspoken and much more militant about my own feminism, was triggered by Me Too. Because when we were at university, but when I was at university back in the mid to late 90s, I called myself a feminist. In the first year of university, I studied women's studies, and I really felt very passionately about women's rights and equality, and I felt that there were still issues that needed to be addressed. And I remember the cohort that I was with absolutely kind of shouting me down and saying, "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Becky. Rome wasn't built in a day. We're basically there with equality." And as an 18, 19-year-old, I think I struggled to find the words to argue back against that. And then as I've grown older and I've, moved into more settled, secure environment, jobs, etc., I think I've probably assumed that things have got better. And then Me Too was like a real explosion of realizing that nothing shifted. How can nothing have shifted since 1995? That's crazy. And then this year, 2021, we're looking at Everyone's Invited, and it's it's totally not shifted. It's all still there. They are all stories, as you say, that I think we can relate to from when we were at school and college and university. And I think that for me is the bit that's really terrifying about it, is how do we shift this? How do we make that change?
Yeah, yeah. And as a mum of boys, you have one boy, I have three boys, there's so much ownership on us as parents to talk about it openly with our children. That everybody's got different viewpoints on this, there, haven't they, as to how honest you should be with your children. Randomly off topic, but at my work yesterday, I had to do lots of radio interviews, and I was talking to various radio presenters about how honest you should be with your children about money. And a lot of them were almost quite shocked about some of the stuff I talk to my children about. Like, they know how much I earn, they know how much the bills cost, and they understand that the mortgage is a lot of money and it takes, you know, so much time to earn the money to pay the mortgage. And I just think, like, be open and honest with the kids, and they will then be prepared for that part of adult life. And I think exactly the same goes with this kind of education and learning, is just talk about it, talk about the call out stuff you see, like on TV programs and in the media, and talk to your children about what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable.
And do you do that with the boys? What sort of conversations, I mean, have you had conversations around this then?
Yeah, do you know what? All the time. So we were watching a program. We've just got Disney Plus. I've just added yet another subscription to the long list. So I'm completely going against my own financial guidance here. I've got Disney Plus, I've got Netflix, and I've got Amazon Prime. Yes.
Oh, so do we. All three. Yeah. All those boxes.
Yeah, never mind. But loving Disney Plus. Anyway, so we've been watching 911, which is a program about the paramedics and firefighters in America. So in America, they're all the same. So okay. Paramedics and firefighters are all like, it's a combined job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And one of the characters has just left like an abusive relationship. Mm-hmm. And there's some scenes where she's like, a Christmas tree's fallen down and she sat there with like blood on her face, and the boys are asking about it, and I'm just being really honest and telling them what happened, and why she left, and that it was an incredible thing that she left. And it's a really difficult subject, but like, you can't sugarcoat these things. I think as long as you use the right language with your children, and you're not explaining it in a scary way, I just think like knowledge is power, and they're not going to be shocked by anything, they're not going to be scared by anything, and they're going to know how to react, I suppose, is the most important thing that I want for them. But in particular with this sort of everyone's invited stuff, so this week I've just had a response from my eldest child's school. So he's a teenager, and he's at a boys' school as well. So it's almost
double whammy.
Yeah. And they are doing so much at school, like various age appropriate lessons, classes, education. They've got like special sort of consultants coming in to talk to some of the older boys, I think. And they've got this whole level of pastoral care and counsellors. There's multiple levels of just education they're giving, but also, you know, support to be given to the people that might need it. They've put a list of things that they want parents to talk to their children about.
Oh, okay. So you've got homework on this as well then?
Yeah. And they've literally, I've written some of the things down that they've recommended we talk to our children about. And you know, every parent's got a different view as to what age you should talk to children about these kind of things, but they're saying that we should talk to our children about consent. I want to open up consent actually and talk a little bit more about it, because it's something that I've learned a lot more about since I watched I May Destroy You. So I don't know if you watched this. It's a show that was on BBC iPlayer. It's incredible. You have to watch it. You'll just adore it for the writing, like, alone. But it tackles some very, very difficult subjects. I'm not sure I'd watch I May Destroy You with the children because it's quite sexually explicit. But there's some scenes to do with consent where so there's a couple that I'll refer to. So there's one scene where one of the characters meets a guy in a club, and she ends up like getting together with him, and she goes home with him. But then another guy is sort of been watching them in the club and then follows them home. And so she's in her bedroom with this guy, like, you know, getting down to it. And then this other guy comes in, and suddenly she's like in this sort of enforced threesome situation. And it was always going to happen because they were, and you sort of see it come about that they were actually mates. There was like signaling between the two guys, and then he like followed those. So she ended up being almost forced into this threesome situation. So there's obviously issues about consent there. But it's not a situation that I'd ever seen on TV or read about before. And then another one which was really interesting about consent was the main character was having sex with a guy, and they were using a condom, and he halfway through took the condom off without her even realizing. And that's rape.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this stuff.
No, it's terrifying, isn't it? Yes.
So yeah, consent is such a
What do the boys say? I mean, when you talk about these things, what are they saying back to you? What's their feedback? What's the level of comfort or discomfort in talking about these things?
Well, I would only talk about this stuff to my eldest. And I just think, just have that conversation that the girl absolutely has to say 100% yes. There can't be any ambiguity.
I think there's something there about it being a yes with more than just words as well. It has to be the word. I think the word's really important, actually. But I think there's more than that as well. If there's, be smart. You can read body language. If there's anything else in what she's saying and doing that suggests to you she's not really into it, then, I think, and that's hard. God, of course that's hard. We've all been hormonal teenagers. I'm not saying that that's not a thing, but I think that's part of the consent literacy almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's more than just the word.
Yeah. And sadly, all of the stories on Everyone's Invited are where consent just wasn't given. It's it's a lot of situations of not just men, sometimes it's women, but a lot of men taking advantage of women in difficult situations. So there was we need to talk to our children about consent. Online porn, which is so easy to get hold of. Apparently, what did I read? It was something like every 13-year-old child has seen online porn in some format.
Yeah, the stats are really high about the fact that most children's first introduction to sex at all will be through watching some form of porn. And it's as early as, I don't know, I've certainly read it as early as sort of 7, 8, 9. So it's really interesting, this idea of when do you have those conversations. really early on, like I think Amy was not even 2. It probably, maybe not even 1, I don't know, but certainly she wasn't 2. And a friend of mine texted me. She had a similar age daughter, and she said, what are you calling the down there area? And I thought, to be honest, I'm just not mentioning it. And I hadn't thought about it. Like it wasn't an intentional, like, oh, let's not talk about what we name our bits. But yeah, and so we went backwards and forwards with kind of conversations on, do you give it a pet name, or do you call it what it is? You know, where do you kind of land on that? It's much easier with a boy because you just call it a willy and everybody's kind of cool with that. But in terms of what do you call girl parts, and how scientific do you get about it? How much do you hide behind sort of foo-foo type, as an example? And then also a bit later on, well, in fact, just last year, we were talking to another person, another dad with their child, and Amy had said something about secrets, and he turned around and said, no, there are no secrets, there are only surprises, which I hadn't realised is a standard safeguarding thing. You're no longer supposed to use the term secret with a child, because that's part of that whole kind of grooming culture. It's part of that whole, this is just our little secret, we don't tell anybody. And so you sort of inculcate this sense that a secret is not a good thing, and there shouldn't ever be any secrets. There can be surprises. So you don't know what's happening for your birthday, that's a surprise, it's not a secret. So both of those things, I thinking about younger children, because obviously I know, before there's a bit of a difference in the ages of our children, but those are all really interesting. And then this idea that even at primary school, which that's me and my own age showing, even at primary school, what you might see porn, but those kind of ages, it's still it's something that we need to be aware of and talking with our children about. And it's a question I haven't got an answer for at the moment. It's something I'm really interested in, is when do I start having, and what kind of conversations do I have with particularly Amy, who's now, she's only 4, but she's going to start primary school next year, etc.
Yeah, that's when they start to ask a lot more questions, isn't it? Is when they're surrounded by all these different people. We need to be talking to our children about online porn and nudes, as in the taking of nude pictures and sharing, which is such a huge issue for teenagers. WhatsApp is like it's just the worst thing for like I'm so grateful that when we went to school we didn't have social media and WhatsApp, because everybody's got WhatsApp. Things are I've sometimes when I go through some of the messages in my son's phone, and you should just think, why are these boys sending these messages? Just the words they use, it's like, do they think no parents are going through it? And there was actually a group that was set up for his football team, which had to be deleted because there was some inappropriate stuff that went on there. But having that open and honest conversation about don't take pictures of yourself and send them anywhere, because yes, they will probably end up being shared. There's some really interesting documentaries again on iPlayer, BBC 3, that talk about some girls that have had images shared and what it's actually, how it's impacted their lives, which leads me on to slut shaming, actually, which was the other thing I wanted to talk about. It's something that I've had experience of. I won't go into too much of the details, but I was definitely slut shamed at school, and it was always, and it wasn't just me. I could tell you loads of the girls that we went to school with that were gossiped about with what they did with X, what they did with Y, and it was never the boys.
No.
But funnily enough, it was always the boys trying to get us to do all that stuff. So yeah, just slut shaming, don't do it. And upskirting, which I shared something on Twitter the other week where it was absolutely disgusting. It was a I think it was like Formula 3 racing car driver. I don't know if you saw the video clip. He was on the stage, he just won the award. He had a bottle of champagne, and like, you know, they have the like ultra ridiculous pretty girls. He took their champagne and whilst it was, you know, exploding up, and he put it under her skirt. This is all it was disgusting. But yeah, upskirting is a really big thing. Boys, why are you doing this, taking pictures of girls' skirts? So yes, there's a lot of things that we've a long list of homework to talk to our children about, but just have the conversation, be open and honest, and
it can be quite difficult, can't it? I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I think there's that question of what was the conversation that our own parents had with us.
I wasn't told anything. Oh my god!
No, me either. There was one point where there was one really awkward conversation. I was a teenager, and for some reason, the term blowjob was introduced into the conversation. I believe my sister was there and my mum was there, and there was a moment where I think. I can't remember. I kind of feel like my mum even turned around and said, well, you know what that is, don't you? And she was just as awkward and unhappy about it. And I was like, oh, yes. And then I wasn't even sure if saying yes was the right thing. Like, should I know what this is? Yes, I do. But I'm, you know. So I think that's, yeah. I mean, I certainly know I'm going to go away and do some research around what kind of conversations you have when you have them, and kind of what tools there are, I suppose, to help with some of these things, so that it's not awkward. Like I don't want my kids to feel too awkward when we're having those conversations. Equally, I think we have to have them whether they do feel awkward or not, but it's about it having the impact, and what's the purpose of the conversation. The purpose of the conversation is to say, you know, we can have these conversations, you can come and talk to me about these kind of things, and also to let them know if they don't want to talk to me about these kind of things, there are a whole slew of other people that they can as well. Dave and I were watching something the other evening, again a little bit off topic. It was about a couple divorcing, and the children were very upset, and I'd said to Dave, I really want, whatever we do in life, to make sure we've always got enough adults around that the kids feel comfy, that they can have a conversation with, because there will be times and there will be things when they won't want to talk to us because they'll worry about upsetting us, and I'd like them to have some other stable people that they can do that with. Yeah, this is all quite depressing though, isn't it, really? I mean, there's lots of stuff to do, loads of stuff is at least as bad as when we were kids. Quite a fair bit of stuff seems to have gotten worse, which is you know, tragic, and it feels a bit like there's it's a bit of a momentum behind this. Where's it going to stop? Where's the worst point? Where does it all end? And so I wonder if it isn't worth kind of pulling back a bit and looking at that Everyone's Invited website for the good it's doing, because it's actually that power of sharing stories, isn't it? It's allowing people to say, actually, that thing that I've been burying or feeling guilty about or feeling ashamed about, I can now speak about it, and I can be heard, and I can be witnessed and understood, and that's a step. Like, it's not going to make everything better, it's not going to change the world overnight, but it's a step.
Yeah, I think the power of sharing your vulnerabilities and your I remember the first time I think I wrote about how it actually felt like to lose my mum. Really sharing the darkness and the emotions of what I can remember from the day and the sort of, you know, weeks that followed afterwards. Just getting it out of your head. And as you write, it's interesting, you'll know this as well, because of your, you know, your job. As you write, like, more stuff that you've maybe buried into your subconscious mind pops out, and that's when you almost like write about something. You just write for the sake of writing, you just see what comes out, almost like daily journaling, isn't it? But yeah, the act of thinking back to a difficult situation, writing down all the five senses that came into that day and those feelings, is incredibly powerful. But then sharing that story, that's where the real power comes in. Now, obviously it's difficult because you're feeling like the shame. You don't want to share, you don't want to share these difficult feelings because you might come across as weak or emotional, or, you know, all these words that we can particularly throw at women. But the power of sharing that story is amazing, because there will be thousands, millions, so many other people who have been in that situation. And it's almost like you sharing your story gives those other people permission to then share their story as well. They no longer feel alone. And it really is just the most powerful thing, to share the most difficult of stories.
As you say, what you don't know, with the memory that's prickling you, that's at the surface, you start to write that down, and as you say, then that opens up actually something much bigger. And as we write things down, we create an order in how we put the words to the page, and that can really help when you feel particularly chaotic about something that's happened to you. That's the first sort of level of healing, isn't it? And then, as you say, that the healing that's available in the community, and I know, like, it can go either way, right? We know that there's the world is full of people trolling other people on Twitter and what have you, but equally, you know, some of those online communities can be really powerful for kind of coming together and surrounding you and protecting you. But I think in this instance, the real power here is just lifting the lid on it. Like, you know, most of these are, well, I mean, they're instances of young people. A lot of them are also kind of historical instances as well. People are writing about experiences back in the, you know, 80s, 90s, noughties, etc. So it's not just about what's happening today. But certainly the ones that are happening today, that the very least we can take from this is that here is an opportunity for people who are vulnerable, who need help, saying, this happened to me, and now the big question is, you know, what do we do about it? How do we respond to it? As you say, on an individual level, we talk to our children, we have those conversations, we're open about that, and hopefully we create a greater level of awareness and develop a sense of what consent literacy might be. There's loads more. There's so much more to talk about what we need to do in terms of building resilience in our children, I think, and both from raising girls and raising boys. I think there's a whole other episode there on how we raise our children to be able to deal with unthinkable situations that may very well happen to them. And we put pressure on our governments, and we put pressure on our schools, and we say, like, this isn't good enough. There's got to be stuff done, and you have the resources and there is the expertise out there that can help transform the situation from where we are today to where we want to be.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an incredibly positive thing that these stories are being shared. There's just under 15,000 of them on the website. I urge people to go have a look and read about it, educate yourself, and maybe you'll see a lot of familiar stories there as well. I certainly did. And the stories are getting out there, so people are talking about it. They're getting it out of a lot of the stories I've read are like, I've never told anybody about this. So it's people getting that negative story out of their head, albeit anonymously. But yeah, so that's got to be a positive thing. So yeah, do we want to say anything else about the subject?
Only that I'm sure we will come back to it in many different ways and guises over the coming weeks, because it's a real biggie, and that's what we thought we'd do. Episode 2. Let's not monkey around. Let's go straight in and talk about rape culture in our schools and universities, and start talking about that, because these are important subjects.
And let's touch on blowjobs and threesomes and
absolutely, or the whole shebang. Yeah, absolutely.
That is what our podcast is going to be about, right? It's going to be about today's issues that affect women in particular, but issues that affect all of us. And the more we talk about these things, then we can move to a more positive place in the future.
Definitely, I think we want to encourage people to, if you're listening now, then, and you've got a view, you've got a story, you've got some advice even on what to say, or ideas on what we could do to really help kind of transform culture and society, then please share them with us, because this will be a subject that we come back to, and we may very well pull out some of the things that people have talked to us about or shared with us.
So on that note, I wanted to end with something which I've just remembered I said I would read in the first episode. So I've got this. So I've just shown the video for the benefit of the people listening. So on my 40th birthday, Beck gave me this amazing present. It's a photo album, and she wrote a little note at the beginning. So there's lots of pictures of us, like as very young children, on the beach at Marazion in like the when would that be? In the 80s, late
80s, early 90s.
Yeah, it looks like a very long time ago. So anyway, I'm gonna read what she wrote, because it's amazing. It's like poetry. Beck is a really amazing writer. One of the best I know. I've learnt my craft from you, so not just you.
No.
Okay. So it all began in September 1988 when two 11-year-olds started in 1H2 at Humphrey Davy Secondary School. What followed were teenage years, family outings to Carnegie Manor to swim, to the beach of a weekend, Saturday afternoons, trying on outfits in the changing rooms of Dorothy Perkins and Topshop. Oh, we loved doing that. Figuring out who we were and who we might become. Through to Ouija boards. Don't do Ouija boards, folks. Don't do it. And maybe that's an idea for another episode. The sort of
live Ouija board.
No, like the witchy stuff, the occult.
Oh, witchy stuff and the occult. Yeah, why not?
Ouija boards, under 18s discos at the Berkeley, and then Saturday nights on Market Juice Street, after cider and herbal cigarettes in the park had lost their charms. Boyfriends, bad decisions, crimping and dyeing hair, mixing all the spirits in the drinks cabinet just because. Chesney Hawks, sausages and chips with your mum, periods, bras, exams, forever, heartbreaks, laughter and tears through the good times and the tragic times and the bloody awful should never have happened times. We became friends who are family. Here's the evidence. And then there's lots of pictures. It's just I love it.
I'm just walking back from the emotion. Yeah. There we go. Life as it was lived.
Yeah, I remember when I first read it. It's just the most thoughtful present. I think I cried when I got to the bit where it's sausages and chips with your mum. But and oh my gosh, How We Loved Forever. That was the defining book of our teenage years.
It was, and it's interesting because I was looking down the list of things that we're going to talk about, and kind of a spoiler alert, but we're going to be talking about literary heroines, and I felt confident that Forever is surely going to come into that conversation.
Oh my God. And you gave me a copy, didn't you? Actually, in my 40th birthday bundle.
Yeah. It was a critical. I mean, again, talking about sex education, Judy Blume. Thank you very much.
That is basically where we got our sex education from. Judy Blume, Forever, and Ralph.
Just 17. More.
Oh yeah, more. Position of the week. Can you believe that we were like 13, 14 buying a magazine telling us about position of the week? That you wouldn't get that now.
You don't need that anymore, sadly. You can just go online. Anyway, there we go.
Right, we need to say goodbye. We're
can I just chip in and say, if you've enjoyed the theme that kicked off this podcast, it is thanks to was created by musician and composer Daniel Greensmith, who is an awesome musician who does all sorts of work for theatre and has played in a number of bands and all sorts of things. We'll put more details on about him and what he's done on the blurb beside the podcast. But yeah, thanks very much, Dan. We really love it.
Thanks for the music, Dan. I know we were a bit of a pain in turning down a couple of options.
There was a tough moment where we said to him, could you give us something that's a mix between what was your favourite tune?
Massive Attack, Unfinished Symphony.
I feel like there was something else, but anyway, and can you mix trance and 1990s indie music? A bit of REM in there somewhere, and he just said that the bastard love child of those things should never happen, but you've come to the right person. I'll do the best I can, and we think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for watching or listening, whichever you choose. So this ends up on YouTube and on all the podcast apps. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Talk soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.